Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Frank Raimondi. I'll be your host today. Look forward to having a really interesting discussion with Max and Nate. We're going to let a few more people join on here, so just give us 60 seconds and we'll start the presentation. Okay. I guess I could start with some singing or something just to fill the silence, but I think we probably everybody would drop off if they heard that. So, well, hey, let's get started and we'll catch people as they come on. So again, thank you. My name is Frank Raimondi. I'm your host today. We are going to talk about MFA and vulnerability management and how they support your cyber insurance requirements, and talk a little bit about the trending within that to start with, and then go through a little deeper. So wanted to introduce my guests today. We got Nate Fox and Max Henderson. So Nate, why don't you give us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing, how long you've been doing it, and kind of what your interests are.
Absolutely. I'm excited for the broader discussion this afternoon. I think that for me, I'm obviously very passionate about cybersecurity in general, and I recently joined Cisco just this past August. So, inching closer and closer to that 1-year anniversary with Cisco. However, prior to joining Cisco's team, I worked at a number of startups where I worked alongside a number of engineering teams, machine learning, AI teams as well, really focused on solving some of the most difficult challenges of delivering software. However, it was clear that security always had a critical role in every decision-making process. And part of that was just due to the fact that the rise of security challenges is ever evolving in its landscape. So it was only a no-brainer for me to join a team such as Cisco within our MSP team that has continued to see just a massive investment. And I have the opportunity to work alongside all of our MSP partners across the West Coast and Pacific Northwest to really focus on solving their challenges with MFA.
Perfect. Good. Well, you got some great experience there. We'll look forward to hearing more about that. Max, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and DataStream?
Yeah, happy to, and thanks for involving me in this conversation. I'm sure it'll be interesting. Yeah, I'm as the slide says, I'm the Chief Data Officer and co-founder of DataStream. My background's in physics, and like every young physicist, you dream to eventually get an insurance. So I've really made it.
It's a natural progression, right? It just goes one to the other.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the last couple years I've been helping. Most of my career in the startup space is working on various AI solutions. Within big banks, and also using novel technologies like quantum computers to do some interesting algorithms for machine learning capabilities, and then been able to apply more of that machine learning capability and product development to the challenge of modeling cyber insurance, which is quite interesting at the end of the day. DataStream operates as a digital broker, and we try to basically make it as easy as possible for MSPs to help get their own insurance through tech E&O and cyber, but also help all their customers get the right insurance for them and make the process as painless as possible. So excited to talk more today.
Perfect. Good. And I guess they just said my name, but I didn't tell anybody what I do. So I work with Nodeware, or IGI Cyber Labs, and IGI Cybersecurity. We're a professional services and software company providing a range of things from penetration tests and virtual CISO. But here today talking mostly about Nodeware, continuous vulnerability management program. My quick background has been on the vendor side for years and years. Worked at Apple Computer long ago. I've worked at Intel Corporation for almost 20 years, and done a lot of different consulting around partnerships and alliances, and that's really what I'm excited about today in this call and in general about my role is working with companies like DataStream and Cisco and others, and kind of the 1 + 1 = 3 mentality of really delivering value to the partners, the MSPs, when we join together and we're not siloed so much and making it hard for the MSP to figure out how these things work together. That's really my role and my passion, is to work these things together. So anyway, we're going to go through a lot of this today, hear more from Max and Nate and myself. So we can bring up the agenda. Let me just go through sort of our topics today. So really going to get this aligning the cyber hygiene practices, and I'll talk about a little bit what that means. But really it's preparation and proactivity with regards to insurance and why that's important, why the carriers care about all of that. We'll hear a little bit more about specifics, or I guess generalities around cyber insurance and what that's driving for opportunities for MSPs. Nate and I will go in a little bit more deeper into the importance of MFA and vulnerability management in that mix and in general. And then we'll talk a little bit about some practical strategies for implementing that. And we do want this to be very interactive, and so you can see in your GoToMeeting box or dialogue box, there's a place for questions. So please post anything you want along the way. We'll either answer as appropriate, timely, or at the round at different breaks or at the end. So we'd love to get your comments, your feedback, or questions. We also wanted to just get a quick polling, if we could, the audience, just so we know kind of who's in what. So if we can bring up the polling question, and just simple yes or no. Are you currently integrating cyber insurance into your sales process? Are you doing any kind of activities? Are you organized with it? Do you work with a broker? Do you avoid it at all costs? Just give us a little feel for where you're at in that. So give it another few seconds to answer that. Okay, that's probably good. What kind of results did we get here? We can see that. How do I see that? I think I can see that in here. Okay, so about 75% were yes, they are involved somehow, and 25% were not. So a good split. So we've got some folks knowing and wanting to learn more, and others that are really kind of at the beginning. So with that, Nate, why don't we talk a little bit about cyber insurance world? What's kind of going on? It's probably the fastest evolving element of insurance in the last year or two than the last 20 years of standard insurance, besides the world of insurance companies leaving areas and leaving types of practices. But within the cyber world, tell us what's going on. What's happening today?
Specific to MFA, or?
I'm sorry, this is for Max. Just talking about cyber insurance in general, just sort of hear what we're seeing.
Yeah, no worries. So Frank's 100% right. I think cyber insurance is one of the most interesting and also still evolving insurances without going completely into the depths of the history of cyber insurance. Relatively speaking, it is a new product. This product sort of started to emerge in really naive fashions in the late 90s and came to get a bit better structured in the early 2000s, and then finally a bit more like the commoditized versions in the 2010s and onwards that you see today. But not surprising to people actually applying for cyber insurance, with questionnaires that have grown longer and longer and schemas that don't always stay the same. The insurance community is still trying to figure out how to measure this risk. Cyber insurance tries to insure a risk that is fairly difficult to quantify for a couple main reasons, but unlike life insurance and fire insurance and auto insurance, we're not sitting on decades and decades of high quality data. There is still a big gap there. So, one of the challenges for the cyber insurance industry that leads to how the product experience works is that there is a data gap there, and still this fundamental understanding about what really does drive risk. The second sort of challenge for cyber insurance that's always going to kick it into, I think, a dynamic place is that it's also a social risk. So, hackers make changes depending on what the world looks like. We saw in 2020 with a lot of the world shifting to digital work because of COVID, ransomware became an extremely popular tactic that hackers used over and over again because they saw that there was kind of a game theory optimization for them. They made a lot more money with those tactics, and there was a larger attack surface with a much larger group of people online. Those types of social dynamics are going to make it hard to ever pin down some kind of static solution forever that covers cyber risk in a holistic way. So cyber insurance continues to evolve, as do the questions that brokers like DataStream are required to ask of applicants. I think particularly within the channel space in the last year or two, some of the trends in the cyber insurance world are an increased push for trying to reduce the number of questions by collecting telemetry data straight away. So instead of making applicants, answer dozens of questions, there's a push to try to get the data straight from the source. So if you're managing a customer's network, why don't we just pull endpoint data on that customer and try to use that as an artifact? This can lead to, again, applications requiring fewer questions. And one of the other pushes is around cyber warranty products as well. So these are interesting and kind of growing in the space, and can be a really good complement to cyber insurance products too. So these are maybe top view, a little bit about the cyber insurance evolution and some recent activity in the space.
Yeah, so perfect. So I had a couple of questions just sort of came in my mind, and maybe other people were thinking about. This might be simple. Are the carriers that you're seeing really active in cyber the same that you see in in retail insurance, if you will, or home insurance, the Progressives and the Geicos and the Liberty Mutuals? Are those the same companies involved in cyber today, or are they getting there, or are they staying away? I mean, who's the big players here for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so there's really good resources about this, and I can send some, happy to send some reports and stuff later to folks interested in this. But yeah, so it's a really healthy mix of, I think, of young players, so new insurtechs on the space, as well as really established old companies like, some companies like Chubb or Tokyo Marine. These are big insurance carriers that a lot of people would recognize. But then obviously there's also new entrants on the market that have only focused on cyber insurance as a product. So probably, again, companies like Coalition or AppBay or Cowbell. These are all probably some familiar names as well to people that have looked around. But so yeah, it's a healthy mix of really established players in the insurance space. So they bring all of that history and experience, I think, to a new product line in cyber. And then also people more, I think, coming from the technical expertise space. So coming with a bit more of the cyber and technology hat that have learned how to make insurance around that. So yeah, it's a big question.
Yeah. Okay, so related to that, then I think I've been sort of trying to get involved and educated here, but I still don't really understand, and I've been an insurance buyer for decades, but tell us maybe the difference between the different types of insurance that somebody might be looking at, right? There's warranty, there's liability, there's combo, there's something else I think you just mentioned. So maybe just kind of a quick definitional explanation of the different types and when they're most appropriate.
Yeah. Now,
again, for an MSP, right? What do they need to think about for their customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably, again, nothing new to an MSP. Like, one of the typical insurances that you would want to get is called Tech E&O, or technology error and omission. And this applies to basically anybody doing IT or software as a service. It covers you for a lot of that, like, third-party liability risk. Often MSPs will also get like a cyber insurance policy on top of that, or kind of combined with general liability too. So that's again very specifically for MSPs. DataStream helps also. We have a digital application for Tech E&O and combined cyber as well. But that application is extremely thorough, because there is, in general, like a higher risk associated with MSPs, because they by nature are connected to so many different companies. And if there is a potential, correlated event, that ends up being like a point of entry essentially. So underwriters do have a bit more scrutiny. They ask a bit deeper questions. That application process is a bit different than small to medium businesses, and we typically describe those as like earning less than 250 million a year in revenue. Those are entering into a space typically which we would call standalone cyber insurance. So this is buying a typical cyber insurance product that has really good coverage. And when I talk about really good coverage, I mean at least $1 million limit, and for key coverage areas, meeting that full limit. So for instance, business interruption, we think good policies would have basically the full limit met by business interruption. And the most popular form of cyber attack that leads to losses is like social engineering or business email compromise. We also want to make sure you typically can't get a full limit for that sub limit area, but we like to have certain values that we see in a good policy. So standalone cyber, these are again, they become more commoditized. So we can, via our online portal, basically in minutes with a single application, give like 30 plus carriers quotes to an SMB. That's new, and again, it really doesn't exist yet for the MSP space at that scope. But these are for standalone policies. There's also something called riders, and these are what we think are a little bit lesser quality cyber insurance products. So you might already be getting insurance, and for a couple extra $100, you get some kind of minimal coverage cooked on top. This can sometimes trick people a little bit, but yeah, those are a couple of the main flavors. And we already talked about warranties a little bit, but those again typically cover a bit less, but they are cheaper and they're tied to very specific technologies. So just like if you bought a car and that car has a specific warranty attached to it, if you use a particular technology, you might be able to get a cyber warranty that provides coverage if a loss happens and you were using it.
Okay, I guess so. That's great. I love that, and I assume on the DataStream Insurance website, you've got some resources and some basic details in there for people who want to learn more. Reiterate that. So last question on sort of trending and all that is again regulation. I don't know if it's by state or if it's federal level. I know I've heard of different things coming down where companies are going to be required to either have certain activities and cyber policies or insurance. So is there any status update on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, for the 25% of MSPs that might not be incorporating cyber insurance yet into their sort of sales operations, this is probably something that is going to be sort of it's going to be something that needs to be dealt with as time marches on. And the main reason I'm saying that is that, like Frank mentioned, governments, and even aside from governments, just supply chain vendors are starting to say, hey, we're not going to do business with you if you don't have a specific cyber insurance policy in place to kind of, again, reduce their own liability. So we've seen a dramatic increase in our own customers coming to us specifically because they had essentially a vendor relationship that they do business with, and they had to get this to satisfy kind of a contract for their business. So I think both from the private space, just realizing this is a good protective layer, and from state governments right now, but probably eventually, yeah, we think it's going to be something like a national requirements. That's still probably a little bit off, but I think it's going to become much more the norm that customers from various elements, either because of state level governments or because of contract requirements, are going to have to get cyber. And so knowing how to walk them through that process, and basically it's a value add for you as opposed to, next down the street.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's, again, kind of why we wanted to focus on this webinar today, was about that kind of where it's at, what the opportunities are. And even if you're not ready to really dig into it, you need to start thinking about it and understand what's going on there. So again, if you're not offering it and not preparing your customers, then they're going to be going somewhere else. So keep a hold of your customers by learning more. All right, so let's go into the next topic a bit. We can show. I want to talk about these 4 pillars that have had a couple other things going, or discussions. I've written a blog about it, and these are kind of really the 4 basics, I would say, 4 proactive, sort of looking ahead, left of boom. Pick your name and your technology or your reference, but really these 4 elements are what we are seeing as critical. And Max, you didn't say these specifically, but these really are key elements that, whether it's requirement that the insurance company wants to know that they're doing these things, or document that they're doing, and also prove along the way that they're doing these things, not just checking the box at the beginning of the policy, or But again, multi-factor authentication, and we'll go into deeper in that in just a moment with Nate. Security awareness training, basic, employee training, email security, making sure that what's coming in, reducing the risk from that. And then my topic will be on continuous monitoring. So the 1 and 3 categories here, multi-factor authentication and continuous monitoring, we're going to go a little bit deeper into and understand where those are at. So Nate, let's go a little bit deeper into, or let's go into your section. And we've kind of all heard about MFA. I mean, if an MSP on the line isn't offering it today or even requiring it today, I'd be kind of surprised. But we'll talk a little bit more about Duo in a moment, just in terms of the specific deliverables there. But maybe just talk about why MFA is such a vital part of insurance, delivering insurability. Where's it going? What kind of things are you seeing as a deliverer of MFA?
Sure, it's certainly a massive topic at that, and a continual discussion with the MSP and MSSP partners that the team that I work with speak with day in and day out, whether it's on the West Coast or East Coast, right? So every MSP is certainly having to understand how to address some of the questions that Max brought up when it comes to cyber liability insurance, when we think of measuring risk and ultimately how we are quantifying those risks, and the challenges that come with that lack of decades of data, right, to really understand how do we truly quantify this risk. And I think although those questions are still going to be ever evolving in how they are addressed, MFA has become a steadfast requirement, really being seen as that minimum barrier to entry, right, to just be able to ultimately qualify and receive a cyber insurance for an organization, given that the radius of impact that an MSP has, given the multiple the vectors of entrance is so large compared to a singular organization. Now, MFA as a topic is certainly not new. However, I'm more than happy to kind of jump further into just kind of addressing MFA if you'd like me to do that as well, Frank.
Yeah, let's just take a quick run through that. Yeah.
Sure. So MFA, just as a quick refresher, is ultimately executed with a tool such as Duo. It's really become a common tool and common market for multiple competitors, right? Which we ultimately see as partners, because we at Duo want to ensure we play well with others, given Microsoft, whether it's Okta, right? So we want to ensure that we can integrate with all those solutions, given that there's so many options that MSP can work with. However, MFA is ultimately that mechanism of confirming a user's identity by requiring 2 or more authentication factors to gain access to any particular resource, whether that is an application or a VPN. And really, those are 2 of the key use cases that we commonly see, that while Duo can certainly support those use cases, that a cyber insurer such as Max's organization would ultimately want to see in place with MFA to protect a VPN or an application.
Got it. That's important. That's good. The one that the cases I've heard of the insurance denying or just in general the executive that I can't bother with this extra 5 seconds of checking my phone and putting in a number, and I don't want to deal with it. How are you seeing that being dealt with? I mean, there's the regulate the good practice activities, but in day to day, are you seeing does Duo, or are there other ways to sort of, if somebody turns it off, if they can get, the MSP can get notified, or is there some other management tool within there to help make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing?
So I think that when we discuss best practices, and if I'm getting too deep into Duo as the solution, I can certainly step back and discuss it later in our conversation. However, we always like to think of ensuring that we're enabling our MSPs to effectively position MFA as a solution that allows the most critical work to be the most secure work, without adding any additional layer of friction or of setting the apple cart for the experience as a user. Because I, like any other individual, I would like to ensure that MFA doesn't prevent me from logging in and just doing my job, right? That's ultimately what we're all seeking to accomplish. And whether we're clocking in or clocking out, right? We don't want MFA to be a solution that creates a barrier of entry, because if that's the case, no one's going to want to touch it. And that's the last type of experience or culture we want to create. And I think that Cisco is really diving into and continually just to ensure that we can kind of break that culture, because I think that MFA is just as much, while a solution is required for authenticating, it's just as important to think of it as change management and culture, right? Those best practices.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking about, right? It's that's where the security awareness training comes in that we talked, kind of briefly talked about, and just making sure people understand. I guess I need some water.
Right, and I think there's features within Duo, right, where how do we ensure those individuals are accessing only the necessary applications they need to access? Is it an engineer that requires access to GitHub for source code, right? Or is it an account manager such as myself that needs access to Salesforce, right? So each of us wouldn't require access to the other tools. So with Duo, you can really ensure who's able to access what, when, where, and why. And we provide the insights to understand what type of device they're accessing, and there's so many other insights and valuable ways that Duo can help you just make it such a more effective way to ensure those best practices are being followed. However, I think culture and change management are just as important as the product itself, regardless if it's Duo or any other solution.
I agree. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So that's a good setup, or just a good overview. Thank you for that. So let me talk a little bit about vulnerability management, and want to kind of call out two particular words: continuous and management. So continuous meaning that, right, it's not, you can't do a vulnerability assessment as a one-time hit, report that up, and look back in 3 months and do it again, or maybe at the end of the year. Both from compliance, whether it's HIPAA, NIST, all the different frameworks that are out there now are calling out the need and the sort of the requirement for continuous management, and that's a kind of a good combo there. We're seeing, again, understanding that. Well, we talk a little bit about the difference between that continuous vulnerability management and penetration tests, because they often kind of are used interchangeably. And I wanted to just sort of help definitionally sort of describe the two. So penetration test, think about it as it's totally third party. It's an outside person or an outside system trying to get into an enterprise, into their network, find a way in, and once they're in, navigate around and discover that. And that's typically a once a year for many companies. Sometimes it's twice a year or even quarterly, depending on their industry and their regulatory requirements. But so again, think of that as an outside thing that the MSP can sort of coordinate and process a payment for, but really you shouldn't be doing it themselves, right? That's the ultimate fox watching the hen house if that was the case. And so that's why it's important from an outside perspective, and that's a penetration test. So that's again, from the outside looking in. From inside is really where vulnerability management comes in, and it's enabling the IT or the MSP or the combination of a co-managed site to identify every asset on the network, from far-ranging IP cameras on the edge to the servers and desktops and everything in between, printer scanners, Roombas, smart refrigerators, everything that's got an IP address really should be tracked and identified and scanned, right? There are vulnerabilities coming out daily. I mean, I just saw a note from the National Vulnerability Database Organization, as part of NIST, that they're just getting overwhelmed, right? It's just having a hard time keeping up with reporting and managing them in the database. So there's no shortage of these vulnerabilities coming down daily. And so that continuous part is both the continuous looking and understanding what's out there, right? And then matching it up against the devices on your network so that you as the MSP and your customer are, again, very proactively, and I want to reiterate that the proactive element of this, of vulnerability management is critical, right? It's not, it's not something that's going to break. It's not something that has broken, but it's something that can break or can be entered into or accessed. And so, again, thinking continuous vulnerability management is looking on a daily basis, getting alerted if a new vulnerability is found on something in your systems, or you hear something in the news and you want to be able to go check your product, check your environment, your customers' environments, and see if that vulnerability is present. And I'll throw in the Nodeware plug at this point, right? That's our key to success is delivering that daily. And whenever a customer comes in, they can know that their data is not more than 24 hours old. So that's a big element of vulnerability management and where that's going. So we'll talk a little bit more about Nodeware in a moment. But let me see if there's, or just remind everybody that if you got a question or you need some clarification on something we said, please post it up. We will address those as we go. So for now, Max, let's go back to you and talk a little bit about what DataStream. Let's hear a little bit more, not quite the heavy pitch, but a little bit of a pitch, right? What does DataStream do, and what's the value to the MSPs to get engaged with you guys?
Yeah, and yeah, I think yeah, there's a slide here anyway, but yeah, just to also touch base a little bit on MFA and vulnerability management stuff as well. So yeah, MFA as a trend, right, was something that was good to have 5 years ago, but now it's become much closer to a hard requirement from most carriers to get quotes. And I think it's, again, because it's such a key good solution for stopping some of the higher cost attacks, ransomware in particular, things like that. And in analyzing the thousands of quotes we get back from different carriers, if you look at companies, for instance, that make $10 million in revenue or less per year, and you look at the ones that had MFA for like email and the ones that didn't, there are substantial price increases in the quotes offered for companies that do not use MFA. This can be up to around $1,000 higher premium on average of the lowest offered quotes that we see. So this has a material impact. You're going to get fewer quotes and higher prices if you don't have the proper MFA solutions installed. And similarly, again, years ago, insurers themselves were not doing things like running scans against their potential customers, and that's changed now. So a lot of insurers are either have built their own solutions, kind of homegrown, or they're just using some third-party vendor to do some basic scanning. And yes, it's a bit of a cross-reference, right? If you're saying, I like Frank said, I'm checking daily for new vulnerabilities, and then someone scans your network and sees a bunch of CVEs from like 2014, there's like some discrepancies, and this can lead to, again, like higher prices, or some carriers just deciding, again, they don't want to go down that route. So having proactive solutions there can be really helpful. One of the things that DataStreams try to do, which is particularly helpful for MSPs, is that you as an MSP can almost run an automated gap analysis around some of these key security controls for any of your customers. So on the left is like a picture of our platform, and in particular, because of the answers for this particular customer, we're highlighting an issue around MFA under the encryption and multi-factor authentication category, as well as the software information. We're showing that they don't update their systems for critical patches within this acceptable time. We put this as part of the application flow for any of our MSPs that refer customers as an opportunity to both make your customer more secure, but then with a click of a button in our platform, your customer can reach out and start a conversation where they would upgrade their security working with you. So it sort of makes everyone happier at the end of the day. It should lead to sales opportunities organically for MSPs, because again, better security ends up being better for the customer. They get sort of a two birds, one stone, better security and cheaper quotes that sort of pay for it. And again, for the insurers world too, we want to make sure that we're trying to put the highest quality risk flow through our various partners. And so, again, hopefully rising tide lifts all boats here. If everyone's doing the right thing, individual companies are getting safer, so they're lowering their own chances of getting attacked. That means insurance companies are more stable as well. And same for the MSPs. They have opportunities to kind of organically sell maybe some security controls that they had been preaching for a long time, but insurance can be a good stick here for why to have that conversation. So it's not just another cold sales pitch.
Yeah. So maybe can you explain a little bit about how an MSP gets involved with you? Where in the process of talking to their customer, helping them, whether they're filling out stuff or providing them information, what's kind of the flow that you guys work with for an MSP?
Yeah, so it's very easy to join up. Like if you go to DataStreamInsurance.com, we have a button that says refer a customer, and that basically kicks you off to becoming a DataStream partner. You get access to our platform, free instance response plan builder tools and cyber risk assessments, all that good stuff. Typically where we'd come into the conversation is when you'd start to make those customer referrals to introduce. Again, we have it all through our digital application system, but you get to decide how we would communicate with your customer. So you can either select that you'd like to handle it yourself and have more of these conversations, or you can click, I'd like DataStream to sort of, start to get involved, and then one of our one of our brokerage team members would start to pick up with that customer. So it's completely up to you as the MSP kind of how we'd interact with you, but we provide you with a bunch of free tooling and a system that lets you see all of your customers, manage each of their applications. And even if you don't end up going through every single one of those customers actually applying for insurance, you can bring up opportunities like this where you could show them kind of their gap analysis within the application itself to hopefully provide some good context and talking points for maybe why they need to upgrade something.
Perfect. Okay. So pretty straightforward. And I know, and probably I know it, and just these. Maybe you can sort of discuss a little bit the limitation of an MSP and sort of getting more involved than what you're providing just from a licensing and other stuff, just so that why don't I just do this myself, right? Why do they not want to do that? Or why can't they do that?
Yeah, we invite any MSP that's willing to do the pain of becoming a fully licensed insurance broker that wants to make a little bit of extra money. So long story short, like one of the most common things we hear from partners are, basically, is there like any way of getting paid some of the commission directly? And unfortunately, there isn't really, because of the way that insurance works. It's highly regulated, and you have to be a licensed broker to have any commission splitting. So while DataStream can't offer any of that direct compensation, we've got lots of other perks and benefits and co-marketing and other offerings, and again, completely free sort of cyber risk tooling and software that we try to bridge the gap there and work with our partners to provide value.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point. I did want to make sure you brought that up. And I think as we talk about MSP wanting to make sure they're sticky, right? They're always trying to add a little bit more or get the renewal next year, right? Their contracts are never guaranteed. So by being smart with your customer, helping them do the things they need to do to get insurance or to get their lower cost insurance. Nate, we'll hand it over to you in a second, but right, when the cost of MFA is going to be less than the premium savings, then that's a good math story to be able to tell, right? So I don't know the licensing on MFA, but if they have to spend $100 a month, but they're going to save $50 a month on the premium, that's a good deal because they have it. So great, Max. Thanks, and we'll see if we have any questions come up. I'll just remind everybody to please post any questions you might have for Max or about DataStream. So Nate, let's go into a little bit more about Duo and understand where it plays in this world, and a little bit more features of Duo that helps.
Absolutely. So I think one of the items or really comments that stood out to me that Max had shared was MFA is a solution that has really helped prevent some of the higher cost attacks, in particular to MFA for email and versus those that didn't, right? And I think that MFA, as I'd mentioned earlier, has and will continue to be that table stakes, right? I think that even in our daily lives, if we step back and think about multi-factor authentication, it's apparent in multiple ways, right? If I were to go to the ATM, imagine if you put your bank card in and you weren't required to put in a PIN code, right? Like that second layer of security. I would have no money at any point in time of my life, right? Like it would all be gone. So just imagine the amount of data that could be withdrawn, right? So at any point in time, there's so many ways in which multi-factor authentication is a part of our lives, and it ties back to culture, right? We don't question the need for that PIN code at an ATM, so it becomes an educational awareness topic as well, as we think about how to position a solution such as Duo for MFA within a cybersecurity framework. And I think if we jump to the next slide, we think about just cybercrime by the numbers, and this is more of the most recent numbers that were pulled in 2023. So 2024's data likely just came out this past month. Didn't get that just yet, so don't hold me to it if it's changed. So if we think about what I've always kind of considered is almost a myth, right? When we think about SMB and mid-market clientele that MSPs are typically going to be working with, a lot of those organizations have this assumptions that they're just not going to be the target of an attack, right? But that couldn't be further from the truth. And these numbers tell that story in just a phenomenal way. And I think of just the average data breach, it is an absolutely staggering cost. When we think of 5.3 million, the hit to the bottom line of any SMB or mid-market organization, that's huge. And I think that the higher data breach costs, as you can see, it is continuing to creep up to that majority, right? Where it's inching closer and closer to the majority of any breach is at that higher tier of cost. And MFA is really that frontline defense. And bad actors, as we think about just the continued way in which I would say even the continued amount of time that we as individuals spend within a remote access environment, COVID has only just increased the amount of time that the three of us and everybody on this webinar spends, whether it's on an application like Slack, or I probably should have said WebEx first. So we think of Slack or Teams or WebEx, and just the amount of time spent on those solutions just increases the amount of time and individuals that are wanting to gain access to all of the communication, the data that is integrated with a solution such as Slack, WebEx, or Microsoft Teams or Zoom. There's so many collaboration tools, which just increases the amount of attraction to those tools for organizations that don't have an office, that they actually go in and have regular meetings, right? Everything is on a remote network at this point. So if we jump to the next slide, and I promise this is the last slide, we want to ensure that we're partnering with our MSPs and MSSPs in a way that makes it extremely easy for them to purchase, provision, and really work with our team to provision licenses for any organization that they're working with. And we think about, even if we look at some of the common requirements that we satisfy, whether it's a native or a custom app, we are able to protect all applications, whether it is, SAML, Radius, LDAP, or OIDC. A lot of the applications that we continue to see specific to SSO will be more of OIDC and SAML. However, there are just an increase around the BYOD and mobile devices, and having insights into managed, unmanaged devices with Duo. It is very intuitive and simple, where through our we think just a step beyond multi-factor authentication, as an MSP, having that insight is critical. And with our feature, which previously was termed Duo Device Health Application, is now Duo Desktop, it gives you insight into the health of the operating system, whether any secure endpoint solution is in place, or if you are leveraging any antivirus tool. So you can have insight into the health of a device as well that is accessing any critical application. So Duo goes far beyond, multi-factor authentication, just to ensure that you can really address who's accessing what application, the health of that device as well. And that's going to be available to you to have those insights at our entry-level tier of Duo Essentials, for lack of better words, call that entry-level pitch there, right? So you'll have MFA and SSO at your fingertips. And we kick off by having a 30-day trial, right, for any MSP. And we do offer NFR licenses for them to really be able to understand and experiment with Duo and feel confident with it, and work with myself and a solutions engineer to understand what use cases is Duo going to be a winner, right? We want to put our MSPs in the position to it be worry-free and to ensure they have the appropriate knowledge to position Duo and who to position it to, right? No one solution is going to be the best fit for all organizations, and I'm very well aware of that. So that's why we want to ensure we work well with all of our other organizations in our market, such as Microsoft or Okta, right? For an IDP, for example, right? So that's critical for us, whether you're using on-prem AD or Entra ID now. So there are so many ways in which we can work with an organization to help them facilitate the conversation, whether it's from a technical or operational standpoint. We enjoy and will take all conversations around MFA just to ensure that they feel confident speaking to their clients.
Great, perfect, okay, super. Well, I think that leads in to me taking the mic again, talking a little bit about Nodeware and sort of, I talked about this in the general section about, how does continuous vulnerability management sort of help answer these common questions, and we can go ahead and scroll through these. So, we talked about proactive identification, right? That's essential to minimizing or lowering the risk. This continuous scanning really is a critical, right? It's called the being proactive and looking for things before they can get hit. Now, there's a downside to that, which is that if you got a really let's call it a really messed up customer that's got a lot of old systems that haven't been patched or remediated recently, yeah, you're going to get a lot of data. But again, your process is being proactive, is being methodical, taking the high priorities as much as possible and driving them to that fix. We look at EDRs, MDRs, XDRs, SIM tools, right? They tell you kind of what happened and what to fix and how to fix things, but sometimes that could be too late and or there's a problem that you're fixing. So again, thinking sort of proactive, reactive mindset there. I talked a little bit about this before, more on the assessment sort of / penetration test versus vulnerability management, right? Looking at ongoing, and assessment sort of a one-time point in time look at the devices, but that can change in a day, change in a week. Somebody brings in their BYOD printer that they wanted to bring in, and if you do an assessment once every quarter or less, then you're not going to know about that, and you're opening yourself up. So again, think about that difference of what management means. It's not just for prospecting or filling out a form. It's actually being continuously proactive and helping your customers reduce their risk. So we go looking at a little bit more of the specific features of Nodeware. Again, truly continuous scanning. We're looking every few minutes to see if device is online, which also enables us to send a quick alert if a new device is brought on to the network. We gather all this through three methods. One is network sensor. So a virtual network sensor goes and captures everything on the network across subnets and VLANs, and you can deploy as many sensors as you like. And those will go back and do a first scan. You can do authenticated scans of the devices as well. Client agents, so a one-to-one, could be on all your remote devices as well as on-prem desktop systems, servers. You can deploy agents on those for Windows, Macs, and some Linux. And then we also have an external scanner for your websites and your external IP addresses. So all that's included. Again, real-time alerts to provide you, new access to new risks that are found. Lots of different reports, both that do a sort of a recipe for helping you define and be prepared for what you need to do more quickly. We've found that saves a bunch of time for the techs. And again, we've been talking about insurance, getting this data and making it usable for compliance and audits, et cetera. What we're really excited about launching this month, this quarter, is an assisted patching and remediation. So within the tool, you find you've got 5 systems that have an old version of Windows, whatever sub-focus or sub-product. You'll be able to actually go within the program and do that patching and the remediation directly within Nodeware. So again, saving a ton of time and making sure that systems are patched and fixed before the bad guys find them. And then we have lots of APIs to take data in wherever you want it to go and other kinds of alerts. So that's a quick review of Nodeware. I'd love to talk more about that, and we'll provide a resource here at the end. So I guess sort of in wrapping up, Max, maybe let me go back to you, just kind of talk a little bit, kind of what are the 2 or 3 things you really want people to walk away with today and be prepared for?
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 things to walk away with would be, if you're not yet again involved in cyber insurance, sort of being part of the sales process, we've seen a lot of MSPs do that really effectively, and it's an organic way to have some conversations around security improvements that customers probably have been told 100 times, but now there's a reason why they would really want to do it. And a couple of the key ones here, as mentioned by Frank and Nate here, like MFA is close to a hard requirement for the space, and will lead to better priced quotes and more of them. And making sure that you are keeping track of your network, especially some of the external vulnerabilities which simple scans could reveal from a carrier, is quite important. And so this is a great opportunity for you to, as the MSP, like have natural conversations about this, have some easy wins, hopefully, where you could bring up some places that could help prevent some of these things. And yeah, the cyber insurance train is coming. So I think if you've never looked into it before, again, it's incredibly easy to sort of dip your toes into. We'd happy to talk to anybody that's interested in that. But yeah, a couple of the key takeaways from me anyway.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. I think there's an opportunity to bring more value to your customer, right? The first thing they always ask is you propose something new. They're, how much does it cost, and why do I need that? Do I really need that? Well, now you got a reason to say, you are going to need MFA. You are going to need continuous vulnerability. You are going to need boom, boom, boom. And here's the requirements from insurance. So if you want to stay insured or you want to stay in business, I'm not just pitching you because I want to sell you more stuff. I'm pitching these because these are important for your business, et cetera, et cetera. So good wrap up there. Nate, any kind of 1 or 2 key takeaways on Duo and MFA in general?
Sure. I think that when we think of MFA in general, it's certainly not a new tool in the market or a new kind of block, for lack of better terms. However, the discussion with your clients is likely going to be, an easier one to have, right? When it's, discussed in the terms of just better understanding the industries that they're in, right? Every industry, whether it is a healthcare industry, it's likely, going to be very particular from a HIPAA compliance standpoint as well. When we think about putting patient health and safety at risk, that is the #1 industry for ransomware and phishing attacks, right? So, and there's a number of other industries that are on that top 10 list. When we think of government agencies, utilities, supply chain, the amount of attacks that they're seeing is astronomical. And so many of our partners that we work with are the extension of those types of organizations. They are trusted advisors, and as a trusted advisor, MFA is ultimately needs to be a part of that discussion of the broader security framework. And we here at Duo are ultimately going to be an extension to your team as an MSP to ensure you feel confident speaking to your clients, even if it's an instance of tagging us in to have a conversation with your clients to better understand their needs, we're more than happy to tackle that with you. And we just don't want any MSP to feel hesitant to reach out to us and feel as if any question they ask is a dumb question. We're here to ensure we address all questions regardless. So
good. Okay. And then on vulnerability management, I would just reiterate the nature of the proactivity, looking ahead, try to find things. And we're talking about insurance, but the other thing we haven't talked too much about is compliance. You know, again, whether it's HIPAA or FTC safeguards or you know, any SEC, any other regulations that are coming down or are involved in, and again, continuous vulnerability is a critical piece of that. And you know, at Nodeware, we've done a number of integrations with different tools for compliance reporting, such as compliance scorecard, VCIL toolbox, control map from ScalePad, and a couple others that we've got integrations going on with that are really just, you know, bringing the data into one source and making it easier for you, the MSP, to enable your customers. So let me finish with that, and let me just remind folks about, or just tell folks about a thing coming up where you'll be able to see us. Both Cisco and Nodeware will be at the IT Nation Secure. And Max, did you find out, Max, if you guys are going to be there? Do you know?
I don't think so, but I'm sure you guys will have a great time. Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll cover you there for you. If anybody's going, please check us out and come find us. And then let me just put up the last slide. Just if you have any questions or any follow-up, here's our contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to, each of us would be happy to have a discussion or a demonstration. I think all of us have, I know Max has an easy way to plug in and start with your first customer. Nate got some free trials and POCs stuff, and as do we. It really comes down to seeing is believing, and both, you know, our focus is ease of use, ease of deployment, and you know, sort of ease of support for you, and we'd love to be able to show that to you. So let me again just wrap up and thank Nate and Max for your time. Appreciate it. It's been a great discussion, and we will be recording this and sending the link out if you want to share this with your colleagues, or you want to catch us what we said somewhere along the way. Hopefully it was all correct. But again, thank you very much, everybody, for your time today, and appreciate you coming along with us. We'll see you soon.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.